Okay, there it goes. So this interview is part of our research on risk perception and communication at Drexel University. We are interested in how you think about these issues. Don't worry about whether your ideas are right or wrong. We are interested in everything you think about this and want you to say everything you think about these issues. Especially for Skype, if the call skips or my voice skips and you need me to repeat something, just, yeah. So tell me all about the issue of data breaches.
The basicness of it is that we're trusting a lot of our data to these specific places, and while a lot of it may not seem relevant to, you know, how it could impact us, like saying, "Hey, we're going to meet up in the park at 3. Are you coming or not?" A lot of it could have very big impact, and I know this from sort of personal experience. I was very wary. I was getting a job. I was very wary about putting my social security number in their hands. I wrote it on a post-it, stole the post-it back after they had put it into their computer and submitted it, ripped it up, burned the shreddings of the paper. I mean, I think that you have the basis of the data breach is sort of to remind people how much information you're putting out there and how much it can and what information should they know, if they should know anything about you, and how are you going to control that. So one of the things that I recommend people do is, first off, there's the whole NSA thing. We've got to fight against that because you don't know what you say, how it can be used against you. There's also just in general not being an idiot with what details you send over the net. This can even be, it doesn't even have to be like Facebook messages or whatever. I mean, I sent my social security number to get, in an email, in a form, in that, and I'm still scared, sort of, are they going to recover it? Is either party going to recover it? So basically, the essence of a data breach is to bring these questions up again and let people know, you've got to be really freaking careful with what you put out there and you what you let people know about you.
Okay. No, that's like, I'm really looking for like stream of consciousness, so that's great. So can you tell me more about what a data breach is?
A data breach is where private servers for a corporation that stores people's data get accessed, and that data is copied over to other machines that aren't within the corporation's reach.
Okay. Okay. Can you explain how a data breach happens?
I mean, there are very clever ways to hack into a corporation's computer system. You could even do sort of like the personal way, where you make something that looks like an ID and get chummy with the security guard and walk in, and they usually have the administrator password up on a post-it note. And when you're there, you can do whatever you want with that data. You can, in less than 20 minutes, you can just send it on over to any other computer connected to the internet. So it's really about really clever ways that people get into the administrative consoles of inside the building. It's not like what you see in the movies where some guys writing a million lines of whatever on the screen and then getting one small password in return. It's more so, how foolproof are the sort of last barriers to entry for the secure storages.
Okay. If you're going to explain a data breach to someone else, what would you say?
People getting access to stuff that they should not have access to.
Okay.
Bad people getting access. You gotta be bad if you want to do that.
Okay. What are the consequences of data breaches?
I mean, so if your company is working on something secret, then that knowledge is public, and it could be intellectual property, or it could be revealing stuff, bad stuff that they've done, which it's still bad stuff, but it's also their private information. Like arms dealers in South America or whatever that they're sending money to. Other consequences on a more personal level are that your personal information is being exposed out there, and a lot of places probably do have your social security on file. Imagine a bank data breach. They have your social security number on file, they have your bank account information on file, and you never really feel safe after that, knowing that the most secure institution in which you put your most valuable assets of life can lose all of its security, and anybody can take your assets at any time if someone's clever enough to get access. Those are the consequences. You lose everything.
Okay. So can you go to that worksheet?
Yeah. Right.
And number 1, could you please list 5 causes of data breaches?
5 causes of
Yep. Don't worry about the order. Just 5 causes.
trusting the Wikipedia.
You can just type it.
All right.
Okay, great. And then can you rank them from most common to least common? 1 being the most common and 5 being the least common.
Okay. So is it okay if I do like 2, 5, 1, 3, 4?
Yes, that's great. That's fine.
1 being the most common.
Yep, 1 being the most common and 5 being the least common.
All right.
Great, thank you. And then the second question, can you please list 5 consequences of data breaches?
All right.
Okay, and then please rank them from most serious to least serious. 1 being the most serious and 5 being the least serious.
All right.
Great. So the third question is, what is the first thought or image that comes to mind when you think of a data breach? Just whatever it is, slam it down there, it's good.
All right.
Okay, so we're going to come back to that worksheet in a couple minutes, just put it aside for a second. Now I'm going to ask you several questions. Some of these may seem to repeat things you've already said. Please bear with me. I have to ask all these questions to make sure I've covered everything. You may refer to your previous answers if you feel you've already answered a question and have nothing more to say about it. So who does a data breach affect?
It affects everybody involved with everybody involved with that computer server. So it could be 10 companies storing their information on one server, on one database supplied by one company, it's going to affect all 10 of them because you don't know what data was leaked where. So it's really just everyone involved, even the server company when you think about it.
Okay.
Whoever's storing the information.
And how does it affect them?
A lot of people still, a lot of people will send trade secrets and intellectual property and just stuff that they don't want other people to know for whatever reason over the web, and the consequence is that now that layer of privacy is gone, and there might be monetary consequences if it's intellectual property. Now everybody has your invention. There could be legal consequences if you sort of admitted to some crime, and if they haven't already tried you for it, they can try you again for it. There could be sort of public image consequences, like the Minnesota dentist and Cecile the Lion. All of these, so uh, the consequences, it really depends on the information.
Okay. What can be done to prevent data breaches?
So for starters, it's on the user's end, where they try to make their passwords the least guessable as possible, and that's where we're also, don't make it a password, make it a passphrase. But it really all comes down to, like I said, accessing some building and doing whatever you like with the server because the password's on a post-it note. And that's where the company's security, their physical, tangible security has to come in. They've got to create infrastructure that makes sure that only a certain set of people are allowed access to certain information, and only, even within that, only certain people have access to this information at this time, constant monitoring of what information is going where, and it really does in some way the responsibility does lie in some way on the corporation's responsibility, on the corporation, yeah.
Okay. Who should be responsible for dealing with data breaches?
Well, the company should be able to pursue whoever attacks their data breach itself, but I think depending on what data was leaked, so if they were able to pirate copies of a movie, that's less severe, and calling the FBI should be frowned upon. But if it's intellectual property, or actors' social security numbers, or any of this sort of personal information that can put people's lives and people's assets at risk, then it's perfectly justifiable, in my opinion, to bring the federal agencies involved, not just the local police.
Okay. Who is the most at risk for data breaches?
The most at risk would really be those. It's sort of general, but those who aren't super familiar with computer systems. If you do what I do, and just know how the system works on a low-level way, and know how to write code that can crack a password easily or stuff like that, you'd be a little wiser to sort of fight against your own weapons and make sure that nobody can take your gun and point it at you. So with that in mind, a lot of the older population who easily forget passwords, so they make passwords that are unforgettable, and a lot of the younger population who don't know anything about passwords and passphrases and security. So it's really sort of those two extremes. I feel like a lot of people in sort of the middles, they're probably in their late 20s, mid 30s. They're the least at risk, but the ones beyond that sort of range are the most at risk.
And how can they be better protected?
So like I said before, it's all about making sure your password is a passphrase and not a password. It's also about sort of getting more familiar with maybe biometric authentication, or any sort of authentication that you can't forget, because it's really hard to forget that you have a finger unless you're high. And another thing that you could do is sort of make sure the information that's on there. I know some people who keep no valuables in their homes, and as a result, don't have to worry about locking their doors when they go out for 2-3 days at a time. And they say, well, if something gets stolen from there, it's not a big deal. It's maybe $20 of loss. And of course, if you're in a crime-free environment, like some neighborhoods, you can think like that. But also, if you keep important stuff off of sort of what you think are easily breachable servers. So I would say something like Dropbox is way more breachable, way harder, way easier to get into than Google Drive. So be smart about that. Sorry about that. So just be smart about be smarter about where you put your data. It's okay to put it online at Google, but not at some new startup if you're worried if you have like a PDF that has your social security number on it, um, and make it really hard to access them in general. So to sum it up in a sentence, because I ramble a lot, uh, make sure your most critical documents are in the sort of rationally least breachable places, and if somebody were to attempt to breach, make it as freaking hard for them as possible.
Okay. Who causes data breaches?
Uh, who causes data breaches? I mean, a lot of people actually breach into uh, secure secure servers and take people's information just to say, hey, I was able to get into your system. If you hire me, you can you can help prevent this happening in the future. And these aren't bad people; they're what we call white hat hackers. But a lot of the time, it's really the government that causes a lot of data breaches. You'll see, North Korea hacks into us, we hack into their servers, of course, with the NSA, and a lot of other countries. So it's really it's really the government who's doing a lot of these data breachings, and it's the people who don't put good security infrastructure in place, or people who allow the government to come in and spy on their users' data without knowing what it's being used for, without a warrant or whatever. They're the ones who cause it too, because we found that the government's pretty easy to get into. There were a lot of hacks with the IRS and the everywhere with social security numbers, the most important information you have. They've been caught and they've been taken. People have taken them in. Sorry, but so if the government can be hacked, and the government's connected to your Google account, and you hack the government, you can probably get into somebody's Google account as well. So it's really these big it's really the big players that are causing it, not so much the little guys.
Okay. Are you aware of the data breach protection laws in your state?
I am not. In fact, I don't even think my state gave a damn if my data were to be breached.
So can you pull that worksheet up again?
Yep.
Okay. At the bottom, there should be a headline.
Yeah.
So read that headline over.
Okay.
What is the first thing you think of when you see this headline?
I think of patients in a hospital having more to worry about than they need to. And I think about hospital administrators who are kicking themselves for not being more secure.
Okay. How do you feel when you see this headline?
I feel disappointed. This is a name like UCLA where I know that they should have some pretty smart people. I mean, it's a university. So the fact that a lot of these kinds of people let me down makes me feel, I guess, disappointed. And I also feel sad. I've been in the hospital before, and I couldn't imagine how screwed up things would be if people knew, hey, Neil has this weakness, let's use it on him. I know one guy, actually, yeah, here's a little anecdote, kind of a side story. I know one guy who had I wouldn't say a bad case of diabetes, but there was information on his personal laptop that made it easy to kill him, like literally easy to kill him. So he was very secure with his laptop. He wouldn't let anybody touch it, let alone connect to someone else's Wi-Fi network. He'd tether it with his cell phone. So that sort of health information getting into somebody else's hands could be used for very horrible things. It's easier to stop. It's easier to stop recording than it is to stop some guy taking advantage of your whatever your allergy or your disability.
Okay. How concerned are you about being a victim of a data breach?
I'm pretty concerned as I'm becoming more and more of sort of a normal person. having my social security number on my desktop and giving all this information willy-nilly because I need the job, and all of this information that I have to pass around with college and everything. So I feel very concerned, and I feel I feel like I need to be very proactive in the channels through which I'm giving my information. So, like I said, I didn't email the HR lady at my office my social security number. I gave it to a post-it and then burned the post-it. So I feel like I have to. I feel like I can't trust a lot of these big players because, like I said, they're the ones causing these data breaches. But I feel like I can't trust them enough to make sure things go back to normal should, God forbid, my data be breached.
Okay. Were there any other issues pertaining to data breaches that we didn't go over that you wanted to go over?
Yeah, well, I'm actually kind of surprised that you guys didn't talk about the surveillance disclosures recently. That's the most that I have to say outside of the scope.
Okay. So surveillance disclosures, like what?
The fact that somebody sort of confirmed to us that the government had been spying on us, that as the documents get more and more released, they're responsible for taking our packages and putting in and making them vulnerable to spying by the NSA, that they're responsible for monitoring our storage accounts to see what all we have in there. And that is technically a data breach, since it's somebody who shouldn't have access to that information getting access to that information. And of course, if they want to look through your computer, if they have a warrant for a specific something, that's fine. But if they're looking through your computer in general, and you don't know what they want to find, and you don't know what they do, and if they do find something, you don't know how it pertains to, oh well, you're probably involved in criminal activity, we're going to have to arrest you. So these complications come up because they've breached your data. So that's the only thing. That's my only thing to say about that for this.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Emma.